I'm Dr. Shawn Tassone. Welcome to Confessions of a Male Gynecologist, a podcast dedicated to women's health and hormones, and pretty much everything else you were never listened to when you went to the doctor's office. I'm board certified in OBGYN and integrative medicine, and I have a PhD in mind-body medicine. I guess you could say I'm a little bit outside of the box. In this podcast, I'm going to get you the answers you probably asked 5 other doctors and were kind of blown off. I want you to know that I'm not only here to talk, I'm here to listen as well. And now, let's get to those confessions. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Confessions of the Male Gynecologist. I'm your host, Dr. Shawn Tassone, seeing patients out of Austin, Texas. I'm licensed in 48 states across the country, and I do telemedicine. So if you're struggling with your hormones, weight loss, fatigue, insomnia, brain fog, hot flashes, vaginal dryness, the whole 9 yards, or if you're perimenopausal and you're struggling with any of those symptoms, give me a call. I also wrote the book, The Hormone Balance Bible. So if you are wondering where to start, you're struggling, you can go to Amazon and get the book, The Hormone Balance Bible. It's 500 pages, 12 of the most common hormone imbalances in women. And I break those down into archetypal language so you can understand things a little bit better. So you can also, if you don't have the book and you want to take a quiz, I know everybody has a quiz, but mine is 36 questions and it's heavily weighted based on how you answer those questions. You can go to tassonemd.com/quiz and you can take my free quiz. That'll just give you a starting point based on how you answer the questions at that time. What I wanted to do in the next couple of months is really break down hormones again. I've done this in earlier podcasts, but it gets lost in the mix. I've been doing this now for a couple of years. And so I wanted to revisit hormones and talk about each of the hormones in depth, testing what they do, what they are. As you're aware, hormones themselves are just chemical messengers that send a message from one part of your body to other organs. So in this case, estrogen mostly being made in the ovary, the signal from the ovary being signaled by another hormone coming from the pituitary gland called follicle or follicular stimulating hormone, FSH. Now, what you may not know, or what you may know, is there are 3 types of estrogen. There's estradiol, estriol, and estrone. Estradiol being the powerhouse. So when we talk about HRT, we usually are referencing estradiol. Estradiol is the powerhouse of the 3 that circulates in your body. And basically, it's the one, in my opinion, that does all the work. You can find it in different strengths, and we'll talk about prescriptions. But estradiol is the strongest form, and it basically, as I mentioned earlier, is mostly produced in the ovaries, can be produced in some of the fat cells. And that's the one that really supports the vagina, your bones, lowers cholesterol, and it basically functions as your powerhouse hormone. So when you see things in, say, birth control pills, and it says ethinyl estradiol, well, that is a fake estrogen, meaning it's an estradiol-like compound that they've chemically altered, ends up being much stronger than even estradiol. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of women who are perimenopausal and menopausal even that are being put on birth control pills for HRT, because it's just too strong of a product. The other 2 estrogens are called estrone and estriol. Estrone is weaker than estradiol. It's the main type of estrogen that you have in menopause. So as your body tries to combat menopause and your estradiol drops, it tries to make estrone. Now, estrone is a byproduct of detoxifying your estradiol. So your body breaks it down into estrone, and then the estrone is subsequently cleared from your body in the liver and in the GI tract. Now, there are three types of estrone. There is 4-methoxyestrone, 16-methoxyestrone, and 4-methoxyestrone. The belief structures around estrone are that 4-methoxy and 16-methoxyestrone can be more carcinogenic or cancer causing, whereas 2-methoxyestrone is more cancer protective. So you really want to, especially in a patient who has a strong family history of breast cancer or breast cancer herself, you want to try to maximize production of 2-methoxyestrone as a waste product. There is a supplement on the market called diindolylmethane, or DIM, that many women are put on erroneously because a lot of providers out there think that DIM actually lowers estrogen levels. It does not. It helps you convert those 4-methoxyestrone molecules over to 2-methoxyestrone, which is the cancer protective form, but it doesn't technically lower your estrogen levels. So if you're currently on DIM, or somebody has you on DIM and they've told you that it's going to lower your estrogen levels, they're either lying or they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. So, and usually it's the latter. They just don't know what it does. If you want to lower your estrogen level, the way that your body gets rid of estrone mainly is by pooping it out. It gloms onto fiber in your GI tract. So if you want to try and naturally lower your estradiol levels, you should consume more fiber. Fiber is going to trap that estrogen, but your body is smart. And what it does is it has an enzyme in the GI tract called glucuronidase. And what glucuronidase does is it cleaves off the estrone, lets it go back, circulate into the bloodstream. The way to block that enzyme is with a supplement called calcium D-glucarate. What calcium D-glucarate will do is it inhibits that glucuronidase enzyme in your gut and allows you to poop out more of your own natural estrogen. You can also take an active B vitamin. Activated B vitamins are those pre-methylated B vitamins. So if you're somebody that is that doesn't methylate well, or has a low COMT, sometimes taking an active B complex will help you process or break down your estrogen. So if you have an activated B complex and you're taking calcium D-glucarate, you could effectively potentially lower your estrogen levels. Now, you have to remember that estrogen is a cycle as well, right? It peaks around day 8 or 9 in your cycle, and then it peaks again around, to a much smaller level, but it peaks again around day 19 to 21. The weakest estrogen is estriol. It's the weakest form of estrogen, and it's the main estrogen actually in pregnancy, and it's because it's produced by the placenta. There are some things that estriol has been shown to be protective against, such as arthritis, and it may have a cancer protective quality to it. I don't think that's ever been proven, but there is a product out there that a lot of so-called hormone experts prescribe, and that's called Biest. The bi meaning two and estrogen, est meaning estrogen. Biest is a product that has estradiol and estriol in it. So it has both of those estrogens. The problem is estriol is about 100 times weaker than estradiol, but it has an affinity for the estrogen receptor. So what happens is there's the chance that the estriol, and estriol is actually sometimes used in cancer patients because of this ability. It binds the estrogen receptor with a high affinity, and it doesn't really produce much of an effect because it's so weak. So it binds the estrogen receptor and it keeps the estradiol off the receptor. Estradiol being the workhorse hormone. So when you take Biest and you're taking both of those hormones, you're selectively binding that receptor with potential estriol, and you're blocking the effects of the estradiol. So in my opinion, and from 20 years of practice, I have found that women that go on Biest are generally not happy with the results because they don't get relief of their symptoms. And that's because the estriol is combating the estradiol. I stopped using Biest years and years ago simply because I was noticing that most women that were on it weren't particularly happy with the effects because the estriol was blocking all the effects of the estrogen. So you have three types of estrogen in your body: estradiol, estrone, and estriol. Estradiol being the workhorse, estrone being a breakdown product that you eliminate, and estriol being potentially cancer protective because it selectively binds the estrogen receptor, but it doesn't really have much of an effect on the estrogen receptor. So that's why I just prescribe estradiol. Now, when you get labs, there are three ways you can do labs. There's blood or serum, there's saliva, and there's urine. Salivary testing, in my opinion, is completely worthless. Salivary testing is a way to make money for people. They upcharge the test, and it is completely inaccurate. There has never been a study that shows saliva is reproducible or reliable. So anybody that tells you that salivary testing for hormones is accurate is blowing smoke up your butt. It's not a great test. So that leaves us with serum and urine. Serum testing for estrogen is very accurate. It's what's in your blood at the time. The problem is it's just a snapshot because it's just that minute or two that you're having your blood drawn. And you're going to get gaslighted a lot by other providers that say, well, why would I want to check your hormone levels? They fluctuate, blah, blah, blah. Well, any doctor that knows what they're doing with hormones knows, especially in a cycling woman, they change. But a doctor that's smart knows where you are in your cycle, or they'll ask you, where were you in your cycle when you had these blood levels drawn? And they know what the estrogen levels range wise should be at that time in your cycle. So when they tell you they don't want to test you because it fluctuates, basically what they're saying to you is, I don't want to do this, right? And you're not going to change that. A doctor that doesn't want to do a test, and they don't want to do it because, one, they don't want to deal with the questions and they don't know what to do with the results, as they said. So if you find a doctor that says that to you, be nice, move along, find a new doctor. So serum testing is very accurate. Blood testing is probably, in my opinion, the best for a couple of reasons. One is it's highly accurate, and two, it's usually covered by your insurance. So why wouldn't people order blood tests first? I'll tell you why. In order to order in order to order a blood test, you have to be a licensed healthcare practitioner in most cases. Now, there are direct to consumer blood tests anymore, but a lot of these coaches and whatnot won't order blood because they can't make money off of it, which is why they order urine. Now, urine is an accurate test, at least from what I've seen. It's very accurate. Usually it's a 24-hour test, and it checks not only all of your sex hormones like estrogen, but it can also check organic acids, it can check melatonin, it can check cortisol. And so it gives you a little more information. The downside to that testing is it's not covered by insurance. And the test will cost your doctor about $250. So if you're paying $600 for somebody to run a Dutch panel on you, or to run a urine test and they're charging you $600, basically that tells you they're making $350 or so on your visit. And that's not good or bad. It's just what it is. So you have to understand that they're upcharging you for that test. So that being said, you have to understand that it's a good test. Don't get me wrong. I do use it occasionally, but probably 95% of the testing I do is purely blood. And blood is very accurate. And I've done this for 25 years. I've done complicated cases. I've had many, many complex patients, and blood is totally fine to do. So basically, I would always go with blood first. You can always upgrade to a urine, or you could do both. but you don't have to do just urine. And somebody that's telling you that you should only do urine testing, again, blowing smoke up your butt. So that's testing. I would go with blood. I would maybe go to urine if you wanted the extra data, but I would never do salivary testing. So then comes prescriptions. And I think what people get screwed up on a lot, or they get bogged down in the weeds on, is this concept of synthetic versus bioidentical. Now, it used to be back when I did residency, gosh, oh, this makes me feel old, in 1994. We didn't really have a lot of bioidentical options. The only bioidentical option we had at that time was something called estrase. And estrase was an oral bioidentical estrogen. It has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. Most of the commercially available estrogens on the market right now are bioidentical. You have oral pills still, you still have estrase, now it's generic. You have patches like Lalana, Dottie, Climera, those are all bioidentical. You have vaginal estradiol that is obviously bioidentical. The problem is, and even Combi Patch has a bioidentical estrogen, unfortunately, has a synthetic progestin. Now, the reason that I bring this up is because people get bogged down. They don't want synthetic. Well, everything is synthetic. Synthetic just means that it's made in a lab. Even bioidentical hormones have to be made in a lab. You can't just go flip a rock over and find estrogen or estradiol. So it has to be made. It's just that these hormones now are synthesized from wild yam and soy, but they're all bioidentical. The only real synthetic estrogens now on the market are birth control pills and Premarin. And I can't tell you, maybe I've seen one patient on a Premarin prescription in the last 15 years. So Premarin just really isn't used very much anymore. And if it is, it's usually some doctor that's just super old and they don't want to change the way they do things. Personally, I would never use Premarin when we have much better available options. So keep that in mind. Most of the products that you can get from CVS, Walgreens, Costco, they're bioidentical. And they're all synthetic because they're all synthesized in a lab. Where I think people get confused is compounded versus commercially available. And a compounded hormone is the same hormone that you're using from Walgreens, but it's made at a compounding pharmacy. And so when a doctor tells you that they don't want to use a compounded hormone because it isn't FDA approved, they're stupid. It is FDA approved. Estradiol is FDA approved. It's just the compounding process isn't FDA approved. So if you wanted to get your estradiol through your insurance and it's covered, you can use a patch, you can use a pill. You can use something called Evamist, you can use estrogel. There's many, many different kinds of commercially available estrogen products that are the same estradiol that's used in a compounded hormone. But a lot of women like to use the compounded because it gives them more options on dosing. That's the only complaint I have with commercially available estradiol is that you're really limited to 3 or 4 dosing structures. And for some women, it just doesn't work. So if you were to go the route of compounded hormones, which are the same as the commercially available estradiols, you can use topical creams, you can use sublingual dissolvable tablets, you can use capsules, you can use vaginal suppositories, and there's even injections, although I'm horribly against pellets and injections for any hormones. I think they wind up being a massive overdose. And you can look at my previous podcasts, or I have an entire chapter in my book, The Hormone Balance Bible, where I talk about the horrors of pellets and injections. So keep that in mind. I wouldn't go those two routes, but you have a wide array of options, and any physician can prescribe those. It's just whether or not they want to do that. So keep in mind, estrogen, widely available. As I'm doing this podcast, the FDA came out 1 or 2 weeks ago and recommended lifting the black box warning off of estrogen. And that's a great thing. It's one of those things. It basically came from the horrible Women's Health Initiative. The black box warning alerted prescribers and patients that there was a potential increased risk of uterine cancer, cardiovascular diseases, including heart and stroke, blood clots, and breast cancer. Now, the Women's Health Initiative is also a horrible study. We know this. It's been debunked many times over by the authors. It was a study of Premarin and Provera, Premarin being the synthetic estradiol that was made from horse urine, and Provera being a progestin, in my opinion, one of the worst medications ever made. And actually, what most women don't know is that in that study, there were two arms. There was a Premarin estrogen only, and there was a Prem-Pro arm, which was progesterone or progestin with the Premarin. The estrogen only arm actually didn't have a risk of increased blood risks and breast cancer risks, and it had a 50% decrease in colon cancer risks. The risks were seen in the group that was taking Premarin and Provera, and that was never really talked about. Most women I talked to had no idea that the Premarin arm only didn't have any risks of breast cancer compared to the control population. And then if you looked at the Prem-Pro arm, the increase in risk of breast cancer was 1 in 1,000, and the increased risk of DVTs or blood clots was 1 in 1,500. So those risks, even though they were there, one, they were in the package insert already, so it wasn't new news. But two, they were very minimal, like a 0.001% or 0.01%. It was an extremely small percentage. But for some reason, this study just caused an uproar. And I've always said it not only destroyed a generation of women, it destroyed a generation of physicians, because even the physicians became nightmarishly scared about estradiol. I never really bought into it. I've been prescribing estradiol the entire time. So all those things you've heard about estrogen replacement, breast cancer risk, DVT, the risks of dementia, heart disease is all being thrown out. Hopefully, my colleagues will take heed of this and stop the fear. I have a new journal club that I want to plug that you can find on my Instagram page on my my feed, where I'm going, and it's totally free, and I'm going to be going through journal articles, one article a month. It's not to overwhelm. It'll probably be 30 minutes a month where we're going to talk about a particular study. And I'm going to teach you how to read the study. I'm going to teach you the limitations of studies, the power involved, and we're going to start going through these. And the first study we're going to go over in December is going to be one that came out last summer. That was a study on 10 million women who were using estradiol, and they had decreased risks of breast, colon, and lung cancers. And that was a very powerful study because it had 10 million women in it, and it was very well done. So you can see where this phenomenon, this mob mentality that we had over estrogen, hopefully is coming to an end. I think part of that is you're out there demanding more information. You're out there demanding to feel better. And that is driving this desire for help. And then the doctors, you know, hopefully are listening and are willing to help. I think that over time, the fear around estrogen will change. The stigma around estrogen will change. And what I'm going to do in the next couple of months is I'm going to do kind of these short breakdowns of all of the hormones, including progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, thyroid medications, thyroid hormones. I've already done these. You can go back and look for some of my other episodes, but every once in a while we need a refresher. And I just feel like with the black box warning coming off of estrogen, that this was a good jumping off point. I don't want to get too much into the weeds with all this stuff because gosh, there's so much misinformation out there. And we like to consume things in small snippets. So I would challenge you to share this with friends that might be afraid of estrogen. For instance, I had a lady 3 weeks ago. She was feeling so much better on her HRT, and she's in a walking club. And she said to the other ladies how good she was feeling and that she was on this estrogen. And one of her walking partners said, "Oh, you can't be on that. It causes breast cancer." And it freaked her out. So still going to be a lot of misinformation. And I'm hoping that I can change your mindset around HRT. So keep in touch. You can call my office anytime, 512-956-0296. I see patients across the country via telemedicine. I do not take insurance, but if you want to give me a call, happy to help you in your journey. Stay safe, stay happy, have a great holiday season. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at Shawn Tassone MD, or on Twitter at TassoneDoc, and on Facebook at America's Holistic Gynecologist. If you're really interested in your hormones and you want to do a deep dive, get my book, The Hormone Balance Bible, on Amazon or other major retailers. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.